I really shouldn't have stayed the weekend. It was one of those lazy yeses you give when someone asks if you want to get out of the city, and you're too burned out to argue. My best friend Owen had been inviting me to his family's place for weeks. Big house out by the woods, some peace and quiet, no plans. I figured a change of scenery wouldn't kill me. What I didn't expect was for the weekend to change how I saw him, or myself. Owen and I had been friends since sophomore year of college. He was the outdoorsy one, always in flannel, always somehow tan even in February. Me? I was more quiet, into editing videos and binge-watching documentaries. But we clicked fast. Roommates one year, inseparable the next. I never really let myself think too hard about why I noticed his hands, or how his voice sounded when he'd just woken up. He was straight. That's what I told myself. I didn't question it. But that weekend, something shifted. I pulled into his driveway just before sunset on Friday. He was already waiting on the porch, barefoot, beer in hand, looking exactly like the break I didn't know I needed. "Dude," he grinned, walking over and pulling me into a hug. "You took forever." "Traffic," I lied. "Also, your texts make terrible directions." He laughed and grabbed my bag like it was nothing. "You hungry? I've got steaks. Also, I may have started drinking." "Shocking," I said, grinning back. The house smelled the same as I remembered. Wood, a little like pine, and something warm, like sun-baked carpet. We grilled on the back deck while the sun dropped behind the trees. I tried not to notice how he looked shirtless, leaning over the grill, muscles flexing casually, the kind of thing he probably never thought twice about. We ate out there, just the two of us, and talked about everything and nothing, the kind of conversations that feel effortless, even when they start to dip into deeper stuff. "You ever think about quitting all this?" he asked at one point. "Quitting what?" "City life, work, everything that sucks." I looked at him, unsure if he was joking. "You going full woodsman on me?" He just shrugged and looked away. Sometimes I think I could. Later, after too many beers and too much food, we ended up back inside watching something dumb on Netflix. He stretched out beside me on the couch, his leg brushing mine. It wasn't the first time something like that had happened between us, but for some reason, I didn't shift away. When the credits rolled, I stood up and stretched. "All right. Guest room still good?" "Yeah," he said, hesitating. It's hot as hell in mine. AC's busted. You mind if I crash in there with you?" I looked at him, trying to read his face. But he just looked tired, casual. "Yeah," I said after a beat. "That's fine." We got into bed, back to back. Quiet. I figured he'd fall asleep right away. But after a while, I felt it. His fingers brushing lightly against mine under the blanket. At first, I thought it was an accident. Then he did it again. I stayed still, every nerve in my body was on fire. And then he whispered, barely loud enough to hear. "You ever wonder what it'd be like if things were different?" My chest tightened. I turned just enough to see the soft outline of his face in the dark. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. He didn't answer right away, but then his fingers slid between mine and he gave my hand a soft squeeze. "I don't think I'm as straight as I thought I was," he whispered. The room stayed quiet after that. Not silent. Our breathing was still there, shallow and uneven. But neither of us said anything for what felt like forever. My hand was still in his, warm, a little damp, like he was nervous but didn't want to let go. I wasn't sure what to do, or say. I just laid there. And then Owen whispered again, "Sorry." I probably shouldn't have said that. His hand started to pull back, but before I could think twice, I tightened my grip. "No," I said quickly. "Don't be sorry." His body stilled. It was the most honest thing I'd said in months, maybe years. I turned toward him in the dark. It was too dim to see his face clearly, but I could feel how close he was. His breath was warm between us, and when I shifted, our foreheads almost touched. "Did you mean it?" I asked. He let out a slow, quiet breath. I don't know. I think I have for a while, but I didn't know if it was just you. I swallowed. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. It's not just me, I said. You don't touch someone like that if it's just me. A faint, almost nervous laugh escaped him. Yeah, guess not. We were quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of silence. This one was humming, alive, thick with something unsaid. I could feel the heat radiating off him, could smell the faint mix of soap and sweat and campfire on his skin. And I realized how long I'd been holding everything in, every stolen glance, every time I'd let myself wonder but shut it down before it went anywhere. I reached up, hesitating for a second, then gently brushed my fingers along his jaw. He didn't move away. Instead, he leaned in, barely, and our foreheads touched. This feels insane, he whispered, but not in a bad way. Yeah, I murmured. Then, slowly, like he was waiting for me to stop him, he leaned forward and our lips met. It wasn't rough or wild. It wasn't a drunk mistake or a dare. It was slow, soft. Like, we both didn't want to spook it. His lips were warm, a little uncertain at first. But when I kissed him back, really kissed him, I felt something shift, like a dam breaking somewhere deep inside. He pulled back just enough to look at me, and even in the dark I could tell his expression had changed. You okay? He asked, his voice low. I nodded. Yeah. You? I think so, he said. I just didn't know I could feel this way. Not with a guy. Not with you. I could have made a joke, tried to lighten the mood. But I didn't, because that moment didn't need it. Instead, I let myself feel the way his thumb rubbed circles against the back of my hand, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world who could understand what he was feeling right then. Eventually, we both shifted back onto our pillows, still facing each other, still close. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was worried or anxious, but because I didn't want to miss the way he looked at me when he thought I'd fallen asleep. The next morning would come, and with it, questions, awkwardness, maybe even regret. But that night was ours. I woke up to the smell of coffee. At first, I thought I had dreamed the whole thing. The late-night confession, the kiss, the way he held my hand under the blanket like it meant something. I blinked against the morning light and sat up slowly, the sheets still warm from where Owen had been. The other side of the bed was empty now. I rubbed the back of my neck, trying to piece things together. My heart still felt heavy in that weird, lingering way, like it hadn't decided if it should panic or settle into something new. Then I heard a pan clatter in the kitchen, followed by Owen's voice. Shit, ow, okay, that's hot. I couldn't help smiling a little. I got up and padded down the hallway, still in the same t-shirt and boxers from the night before. He was standing at the stove in gym shorts and a hoodie, flipping eggs in a pan like nothing had happened, like it was just another Saturday morning. Morning, I said, leaning against the doorway. Owen looked up, his eyes meeting mine for a second too long. Then he gave me that half grin he always used to get away with everything. Hey, hope you're hungry, I nodded, stepping into the kitchen. You didn't have to cook. Yeah, well, figured it was the least I could do after. Right, there it was. He looked back down at the pan. So, about last night. I felt my stomach clench. Here it came. The part where he says he was drunk, confused, didn't mean it. I'm not freaking out. I said before he could say anything else. If that's what you're worried about. He glanced at me again, then looked relieved. Good, 'cause I was. We stood there for a second in the soft hum of the kitchen. The eggs sizzled. The coffee machine beeped. Then Owen said, I meant it, by the way. What I said. I studied him. You sure? He gave a short laugh. No, but I'm sure it felt right. That was more honest than I expected. We ate in the sunroom, plates balanced on our laps, the backyard still soaked in early morning dew. He told me about a dream he'd had, something random and weird, and I played along like everything was normal. But the truth was, something had changed. The way he looked at me wasn't the same, and I knew I wasn't looking at him the same either. After breakfast, he offered to go for a walk through the woods behind the house. It was something we used to do all the time in college, just walk and talk when things got too noisy. Only this time, the silence between us had a weight to it. Not heavy, just expectant. Owen stuffed his hands in his hoodie pockets. You know I've never told anyone, right? Not even close. I nodded. I figured. He glanced over. I didn't even really think about it until you. I knew something was off, but I thought maybe it was just me being weird, or lonely. My chest tightened. You're not weird, and you're definitely not alone. He gave me a small, grateful look. Thanks. We kept walking. The trail behind his house curved into a clearing with a few fallen logs and a bench his dad had built years ago. We sat there, the wind tugging gently at the trees, a few birds calling out from somewhere nearby. I don't know what this is, he said finally, staring at the ground, but I don't want it to be just a one-time thing. I swallowed hard. Neither do I. He reached over slowly, fingers brushing mine. Then, bolder, he laced them together. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't fireworks, it was better, it was real. We stayed there for a while, just sitting. His hand still wrapped around mine like he was afraid that if he let go, the moment would slip away and we'd never get it back. Owen wasn't a talker when it came to this kind of stuff. Feelings weren't his thing, so the fact that he was even trying, that he reached for me at all, meant more than anything he could have said. Eventually, he cleared his throat. My mom would lose it if she knew. I looked at him. Yeah? He nodded, a bitter smile flickering across his face. She's one of those church every Sunday types. She's already convinced I'm a disappointment because I haven't settled down with a nice girl yet. I didn't know what to say to that. I mean, I got it. My family wasn't exactly open-armed either when it came to who I was. But it still hurt to hear it out loud from him. You think you'll tell her? I asked. Owen leaned back on the bench and tilted his head to the sky, exhaling slowly. I don't know. Maybe. If this turns into something real. He said it casually, but the words hit me in the chest like a jolt. Something real. I didn't want to get ahead of myself, didn't want to start imagining things that weren't there. But the way he looked at me right after he said it, like he was trying to read my reaction, told me he wasn't just throwing words around. We walked back to the house in comfortable silence, our hands occasionally brushing, but not held. Not in the open. Not yet. Once inside, we each did our own thing for a bit. I showered, he made lunch. We watched a little TV, but there was this quiet energy under everything, like we were both waiting for the next moment when we'd end up alone again, close again, maybe braver than before. And that moment came sooner than I expected. After dinner, Owen disappeared upstairs. I figured he needed a minute, maybe to think, maybe to panic. I didn't blame him. But about an hour later, as I was flipping through my camera roll in the living room, he came back down. Hoodie gone, hair damp from a shower, just wearing joggers and that old gray tee that always clung a little too well to his chest. He stood in the doorway like he was debating something. Then he spoke. You coming to bed? It wasn't a question, really, more like a suggestion he hoped I'd take. I stood, my legs feeling heavier than they should have. But I followed him. Back in the guest room, the lights were off. Just the moonlight creeping in through the blinds. He slid into bed first, lifting the blanket without a word. I slipped in beside him, our shoulders brushing. We didn't speak. Not right away. Then Owen shifted, turning onto his side to face me. His voice was barely above a whisper. I keep thinking about last night. Me too, I said, my pulse suddenly loud in my ears. I want to do it again, he admitted, but only if you want to. I didn't answer right away. I just leaned in and kissed him. It was different this time. More certain. More hungry. Like the hours we'd spent apart had only built the pressure between us higher. His hand slid under my shirt, fingers grazing my waist, and I flinched, more from surprise than discomfort, but I didn't stop him. I didn't want to. "I don't know what I'm doing," he murmured against my lips. "You're doing fine," I breathed. And he was. God, he was. That night was slower. Less like an accident and more like something we both chose, again and again, with every movement, every touch. Every pause where we asked, silently, "Is this okay?" Every answer, yes. And when it was over, whatever you want to call what happened, we didn't roll apart. He didn't jump up or pull away or try to laugh it off. He stayed, his arm wrapped around me, his body pressed against mine, our breathing syncing up in the dark. He didn't let go. Not for a long time. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight leaking through the blinds and the weight of Owen's arm still draped over my waist. For a second, I didn't move. I just lay there, eyes half open, feeling the rise and fall of his chest against my back, the soft exhale of his breath brushing my shoulder. He was still asleep, or at least pretending to be. I wasn't sure which. But he hadn't let go. That had to mean something. Eventually, I turned a little, just enough to look at him. His hair was a mess. His face relaxed in a way I rarely got to see. I almost didn't want to wake him, but I did, gently. Just a quiet, "Hey." He stirred, blinked, and then focused on me. No panic, no regret. Just that same sleepy calm from the night before. "Morning," he mumbled. "Morning." He rubbed his eyes, then smiled, soft and crooked and real. "Still here, huh? Were you expecting me to run off?" He shrugged, but the look in his eyes was more vulnerable than I'd ever seen. "Wouldn't blame you." I reached out, touched his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Something shifted behind his eyes, like a wall dropping a few inches lower. "Good," he said quietly. "Me neither." We stayed in bed longer than we should have, talking, touching, kissing a little, laughing when the blankets got tangled. It didn't feel like some scandalous secret anymore. It felt easy. But by late morning, the spell started to crack. Owen got a text from his mom. Something about a neighbor needing them to check on the shed before a storm rolled in. He groaned, rolled out of bed, and pulled on jeans and a hoodie. "I'll be back in like an hour," he said, grabbing his keys. "You gonna be okay here?" I nodded. "I'll just chill. Maybe get a little editing done." He hovered at the door for a second longer than necessary. "We're good, right? We're good." That seemed to satisfy him. He left with a small smile, and I watched his car roll down the gravel driveway until it disappeared. Then I sat back down on the bed, suddenly too aware of the silence in the house. This was the part one wasn't ready for. The waiting. The wondering. The what happens next. I got up, made coffee, scrolled aimlessly through my phone, and tried not to overthink. But when you go from holding someone in the dark to being alone in their house with nothing but time and your own thoughts, it's hard not to spiral a little. I kept asking myself the same question. Was this real or just a one-off moment? When Owen finally came back, the sun was higher, the air warmer, and I was halfway through a playlist I didn't even remember building. He walked in, kicked off his boots, and came into the kitchen like nothing had changed. But when he saw me, he hesitated, just a blink, and then crossed the room, leaned against the counter beside me. "I thought about you the whole time," he said. That threw me. "In a good way," he added, smirking when he saw my expression. "Oh." I cleared my throat, trying to sound casual. "Cool." "Cool," he echoed, nudging me gently with his shoulder. There was a long pause. Then he added, "I meant what I said. Last night. I don't want that to be a one-time thing." I looked at him. Really looked. And I saw it. The nerves. The hope. The barely hidden fear that maybe I hadn't felt the same way. But I did. Neither do I said, and his face lit up like I'd handed him the sun. It was still new, still uncertain, still terrifying. But as I leaned in and kissed him again, this time in the daylight, in his kitchen, without anything to hide behind, I realized something. It didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like a promise. The rest of the weekend passed in that strange in-between space. Half real life, half dream. We didn't talk about labels. We didn't map out the future. We didn't even leave the house much. It was like we'd slipped into our own little world where the only thing that mattered was how close we were, how natural it felt to fall into the rhythm of each other's company. It wasn't all perfect. There were pauses. Moments when Owen would zone out or go quiet, like his mind was catching up to his body. But he didn't pull away. He didn't disappear. And that meant more than anything. Sunday afternoon, as we sat on the porch eating leftovers and listening to the birds, he turned to me and said, "So what happens when we go back?" I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know. "We just keep going?" I said finally. "See where this leads?" He nodded slowly. "You okay if we don't tell anyone yet?" My chest tightened for a second, but I understood. This wasn't just about me. He was still figuring himself out, and I wasn't about to rush that. "Yeah," I said. "We don't owe anyone an explanation." "Not yet." He smiled in relief, like he was half expecting me to be upset. But I wasn't, because I'd rather take things slow than lose what we'd started. That night, when we packed up and got ready to drive back to the city, the mood shifted. The weight of the real world was creeping in. The bubble was about to pop. Owen offered to drive. I let him. The radio played quietly as we cruised down the highway. He kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually between us. Every now and then, his pinky would brush mine. Like a secret signal. I didn't move away, but as the skyline came into view, his posture changed. He sat up, straighter, checked his mirrors more than usual, like he was mentally putting the walls back up. By the time we got to my place, it was dusk. He helped carry my bag up, like always. But when we got to my door, there was a pause. I unlocked it, pushed it open, then turned back to him. "You want to come in?" He looked like he wanted to, but then he shook his head. "Not tonight. I should get home. Clear my head a bit." I nodded, tried not to read into it. He stepped forward, gave me a hug. But it was different this time. Slower, firmer. He didn't let go right away. Then, just before he stepped back, he whispered, "Thanks for not freaking out." "I'm not going anywhere," I reminded him. He nodded. "I know. Just give me a little time, all right? Take all you need." He left, and I stood there in the hallway for a long time, my hand still on the doorknob. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't regret. It was transition, and I was okay with that. The following week felt like stepping into a completely different life. Owen and I didn't talk much those first few days. A couple texts. One short call where he asked if I'd gotten that new client I'd mentioned. All polite. All safe. But under the surface, I could feel it, that we were both still turning over what had happened, trying to make sense of it without screwing it up. The weird part was, nothing technically had to change. We'd always been close, always had the kind of friendship that made people ask if we were more than that. But now that we actually were, well, sort of, it made everything feel sharp around the edges. I saw him again that Friday. He texted in the afternoon. "Owen, want to grab a drink?" "Me? Just us?" "Owen, yeah, just us." We met at a quiet bar halfway between our places. It wasn't fancy, and that's why it worked. Dim lighting, soft music, a place where no one would really be paying attention. He was already there when I arrived, a beer in hand, hoodie sleeves pushed up like always. When I sat down across from him, he gave me a smile I hadn't seen since the lake house. Warm, a little nervous, and just for me. "Hey," he said. "Hey." We didn't talk about it right away. We caught up like we always did. Joking about work, venting about traffic, comparing the worst takeout we'd eaten that week. Then he got quiet. "I've been thinking about that weekend," he said, his voice low. "Me too." He looked up, held my gaze. "I've never felt more okay, and more scared." That hit harder than I expected. "I get it," I said. "It's not like you can just flip a switch and start living out loud." He nodded, fiddling with the label on his bottle. "I keep thinking about what it would mean, like if I told my friends, my family, even just one person. It'd make it real." "It is real." "Yeah," he said, "but right now, it's ours. You know? No opinions, no explanations, just you and me." I didn't argue with that, because I understood exactly what he meant. We walked back to his car afterward. It was cool outside, the kind of fall night that made you pull your sleeves down and lean into warmth. Before I could say goodbye, he stopped me. "I've been thinking about something," he said. "A lot." "What?" "If we keep pretending this is temporary, we're gonna lose it, and I don't want that." My heart did a weird little flip. "You don't?" He shook his head. "I want to try. Really try. Like, see where this goes, for real. Even if it's hard. Even if it's slow." I stepped closer. "That sounds like a pretty big deal." "It is," he said. "So I'm asking you, can we not just leave this in the woods or in a dark bedroom? Can we try being a thing?" The way he said "thing" made me smile. I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, Owen, we can be a thing." He kissed me right there, in the dim glow of the streetlight. Soft, quick, but not hidden. Not anymore. We didn't come out with a grand announcement. There were no Instagram posts, no dramatic declarations, just small changes, quiet moments that started to bleed into the outside world, like the way Owen started texting me goodnight, or how he'd call just to hear my voice on the days we didn't see each other. The first time he showed up to my apartment on a Saturday morning with coffee and bagels, my neighbor saw him kiss me on the cheek and didn't even blink. We were learning how to exist in this new space, still Owen and me, but now also us. About 2 weeks after that night outside the bar, he invited me to his place. "Just to hang," he said. "No pressure." But when I got there, his roommate was home, and for the first time, Owen didn't flinch when I touched his arm. He didn't step back when I leaned on the back of the couch behind him. Later, when his roommate left the room, I looked at him. "That was kind of brave," I said. He shrugged, but his smile was proud. "I'm not hiding anymore, not from people who matter." And it was true. Slowly, piece by piece, the walls came down. He wasn't out, not officially, but he wasn't locking the door behind us either. And that was enough, for now. There was one night, quiet, cold, early December, where we sat on the hood of his car, just outside the city. We had a view of the skyline, and steam curled from our coffee cups as we sat shoulder to shoulder under a shared blanket. "You ever think about how weird it is?" Owen asked. "How all it took was one weekend." I thought about it. How fast it happened, how slow it had actually been building. "Not weird," I said. "Just overdue." He smiled, nodded. "Yeah, feels that way." Then, softer, "You changed something in me." I looked at him. Really looked. "No," I said. "You changed something in yourself. I was just there when you finally saw it." He didn't answer. Just leaned in and kissed me like it wasn't a big deal, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And I realized this wasn't the beginning of a fling. This wasn't a phase or an experiment. This was the start of something honest. We'd come a long way from that quiet bedroom and that nervous, whispered confession in the dark. We still had more to figure out. Conversations we hadn't had, people we hadn't told. But the fear wasn't running the show anymore, and neither of us was pretending. Owen wasn't a secret anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just waiting for someone to figure themselves out. He'd already chosen. So had I. And this, whatever this was turning into, it finally felt like home.